Saturday. Christmas comes early.
Unbelievable. Welcome to this incredible scene.
Bills.
To the end zone.
Chargers.
It's a touchdown.
An exclusive NFL game.
That's fantastic.
Live in primetime.
Wow.
Only on Peacock.
With a Christmas gift to their fans.
They're having some fun now.
Bills versus Chargers. Saturday, 7:30 Eastern. Exclusively on Peacock.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Cowan Report wherever you get your podcast. You're watching on YouTube. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media. That's AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in, and you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now about the case for and against Sam Howell going forward, because there's a case to be made for him to stick in that position, and there's going to be a case to be made that maybe they look in a different direction through the draft or something like that. Anyways, it's on ESPN.com. Give it a read. Appreciate it. And also, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and I hope everybody has a good new year. And always, as always, again, thanks for tuning in. Greatly, greatly appreciate it, especially during seasons like this where it has not gone to your liking. Anyways, I'm going to do my little Friday Five. Got four items, and then talking a little bit about the game, because they're still playing a game. And does it matter? Well, it does for draft position. So, and in a negative way for this team. So anyway, to get to that in a minute, just a brief update on injuries. And we were just out of practice. I'm recording this before we get the official injury report, but Brian Robinson was not on the field. He's got the hamstring injury. Charles Leno, Tyler Larson, neither one of them were on the field today, haven't practiced all week. And again, you can check back later on Twitter and whatever, on ESPN.com to see about their injury status. I would say when you don't practice all week, and for Robinson, you haven't played in a couple of games, doesn't look good for Sunday. So not good for them, for the team, but it's hard to imagine them playing. Anyway, let's get to my Friday Five, starting with it's a bounce back game for Sam Howell. And I think this is where, listen, you want to learn as much as you can about a kid. And when you have a game, and even he would say that was a bad game for him. It's funny because I know some of the people here are like, it wasn't as bad as people think, but Howell will tell you it was not a good game. And I agree. And there were some hiccups there. And there were some plays that's like, could you have done this differently? Well, yes, of course. But this is, the kid's a tough kid. And I think one of the things that players like about him is his resiliency and ability to bounce back and not let one game impact how he plays going forward, understanding the rhythms of the quarterback position. In one game, one series, one play might go bad. You still got to focus on the next play. And I think he does that pretty well. It's not all about him. There's obviously other factors that go into it. You can't just blame him if it goes wrong, because whether it's a block, whether it's a receiver, whether it's a play call, sometimes it goes wrong. And it could be all of that. It could be on Howell. Point is, I think they want to see how do you respond in a game like this. And there was clearly you watch what Jacoby Brissett did, and it's like, would Howell be helped by sitting a game and watching him? And I'll get to that in a minute. Anyway, so it really, for him going forward, it's about decision-making, anticipation. Are you throwing with more anticipation? Are you getting back to how you were during some of those better times? And keep in mind, they're playing really good defenses now. And, so a couple of things I wanted to go over is, when I did my little Tuesday review, talked about some of the Rams coverage and how they did a lot of movement right before the snap and post snap, and how much of that affect his game? And you watch and you think that it has an effect, and then others disagreed. That's why I like talking to people, because maybe it enhances your knowledge of what you thought you saw during the game and the impact of what you saw during the game. And I think there's some people there that did not think it was as big a deal, that the Rams didn't do more than a lot of other teams did. So it wasn't like this, that he was getting fooled by it a lot, but it certainly was effective. I'll say that. And for a quarterback, in Howell's case, because one of the things they talk about, like what happens in that situation, like if you know there's going to be a lot of post snap movement or movement right there, how are you going to handle that to make sure it doesn't affect you? And a lot of it is, you find the guy, obviously you're going to read one of the safeties. You got a safety you're going to read. Does he rotate? If he rotates over here, then you know it's this coverage and you're going over here. And sometimes it's just a glance out of the eye to see. You don't have to sit there and stare and like, is he going to do it? Is he going to do it? It's more like, get the ball, get that glance and see where it's going. Now you know what they're in. And then there are other plays too, where it doesn't matter if it's man or zone, you've got the play and that's what you're going to run because it's designed to beat either. So it's not always about, oh, they got him because of this. And there are a couple of plays in particular that I talked about on Tuesday that I wanted to kind of go back over because you learn more about it. And one of the plays, there was one play early in the game where he throws like an 8-yard pass to Antonio Gibson. I think it was like the fourth play of the game. And he has McLaurin on the left side in a one-on-one situation. Well, ends up to be one-on-one, but it looks like a split safety look. And it seems like the Rams rotate to almost like an inverted cover two. So the corner on the outside is going to drop back. So in that situation, now this backside safety, which would have been to Terry's side, starts to kind of inch to the middle because that's where Howell opens up. McLaurin wins off the line and he's going to be open. And so the question I always had, it wasn't so much did Howell make the wrong play, but is there something he could do to get over there? And yes, there is. Like if you read that pre-snap, you can communicate somehow with McLaurin, or you just know like, all right, this is what I see. This is where I'm going to go. However, in this case, and this is what Howell also sees, is a blitz coming to that side. You see that the safeties are, you see the rotation with the front side, the play side safety drops in again, as if it's an inverted cover two. So you see that, and that tells you, here comes the blitz, get the ball out over here. So, and he gets an 8-yard gain. So part of me, again, you want, and it wasn't a criticism, is a wonder, could you have done this? What's the method to getting over there? But the other part of this is you see that blitz coming. If he had sat there and said, well, I'm going to go to McLaurin, well, maybe that blitz gets home and the safety, backside safety actually stays. So it's a cover two still. And so the safety is going to rotate over. And now maybe you hold the ball and now maybe you get sacked. So he takes a 9-yard gain. It's a good decision there. But again, like sometimes can you get there? Well, yes, there is a method to get there. But in this play, I think he handled it right. The other one was there was a throw down the sideline that was almost intercepted. It was a cover two shot to McLaurin. And one thing I wondered is because the play I just talked about, you see McLaurin having a one-on-one, what appears to be a possible one-on-one situation over here. Is that why he goes there? And really what, when you talk to people, what happens there is the corner is able to sink more because there's nobody underneath to occupy or to threaten him. So if you have another receiver coming underneath, that's where you can go. Now in that situation, maybe you don't throw it because you see the corner sinking, but it wasn't a matter of he thought it was going to be a cover 3 look and you're going there. They knew it was going to be a cover 2. It's just the way the corner was able to sink because no threat underneath that makes that a tougher throw. And I think that's why that play was made. And again, maybe that's one where you get off that because you see that the corner's sinking so much, but it wasn't a matter of him being confused by what he saw as much as it was corner just was able to sink more because there's nobody underneath. All right. So number 2, did sitting help Howell? He only sat for 2 series. So when you talk around, like clearly Jacoby Brissett did a nice job, but, and also what did Eric Bieniemy talked on Thursday about maybe there's some things he was taking for granted that he started to see he couldn't do that. So I'm going to explain that in a second, but with the sitting part, did that help? Well, not necessarily, because again, you ask around, like they were in a 2-minute offense there. It wasn't what they had been running earlier in the game. So it's not like they're running the exact same stuff. And now Howell can sit there and say, oh, in this look with that play, this is where I can go because of this. It was a 2-minute drill situation. The Rams were playing a little bit different. And it's not and I always thought it was not an apples to apples situation for a variety of reasons. And that's one of them. And I think the way that Howell could learn is if you sat a whole game, because now you get to see how does somebody else operate the same offense against these looks. And then you can start to learn something. But in that situation, it's like, yeah, you see that he's playing with some freedom. You see this, you see he's getting the ball over here and all that, but it's not necessarily what he was running during the game to really give you an example of this is what I did, this is what he did. Different situation. So, but a full game, that's where you could get it. But I think, again, one of the reasons why they certainly want to keep playing with Howell is because they want to see how you bounce back. And again, it's another good defense. It's also an offense that's not very good. So you figure the game should be close. So it gives him a better idea. Maybe they can run a more balanced attack that gives him the chance to have a better game. But again, sitting the whole game, I think, would be a bigger deal, and wanting to see the bounce back is another big deal. That helps with the growth. Now, I will say, like, there's an argument to be made that if you sat him and you watch how Brissett operates, then you can see how much of it was the quarterback. Maybe it was this, maybe it was that, maybe it was just what we thought, right? Or maybe it was the O-line, maybe it was this. How much, what the parts are of it, and do you get a better read on other players because of that? But the bottom line is, this is still about the growth and development of Howell, because you still need to get him the whole season, measure it all, put it all into the pot, swirl around, see how it comes out, see how you process it after studying it and analyzing it in the off season, because you have time to do that, regardless of who's here. The first thing a coach is going to do is going to go over and see, do they have the quarterback? What do I think of him? And this is all part of the process, because you can tell, like, hey, had a tough game last week. This is how he responded the following week.
All I want for the holidays this year is some NBA action. This week, new customers can score $150 instantly in bonus bets just for betting $5, an instant dub just for you. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code KEIM, K-E-I-M. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting just $5 on basketball. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code KEIM. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort. 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/basketball for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources.
Number 3, Khaleke Hudson. Always have liked that guy. And then, he hasn't played, and there's always, so he goes out and plays the other day and has 14, 15 tackles, did this against Dallas last year. So why doesn't he play more? Well, first of all, he's going to play the next couple games as long as he stays healthy, because you need him to. And he's done a nice job with it. Why not more opportunities earlier? Well, first of all, they're only using 2 linebackers a lot of the time. But since the change, early on, they went to a lot more 4-3, true 4-3 sets with Hudson in there, or you could use Hudson maybe in some of those Buffalo nickel roles and still be okay. But so why is he? One of the things is perception. It's just perception. He's not a guy. He was not a high pick. He's not a big guy. He's not this, Jamin Davis looks like an NFL linebacker. The other guys are bigger than him. He's not a big guy. So that's going to taint your perception right there. It's a little bit like, other positions. If you don't fit this mold of a quarterback, or this, this spot, that spot, safety. Jeremy Reeves had to fight hard to earn that roster spot for a long time because of his size. And so I think that's part of what goes on with Hudson, and one reason why. And there are some things that, they all have flaws. I mean, there are sometimes with coverage that, when we watch him in practice, that he's going to get beat on against the backs or whatever. We've seen that with other guys. But when you're a guy in his situation, when you already have a perception of him, it's going to be held more against you. And, I think the other thing is he plays fast. So even with that size, so if you got that size at linebacker, you're going to be concerned, how is he going to get off blocks? Is he going to get swallowed up by the blocks? Well, what he's done well in the games where he started and played, he beats the block. He anticipates very well, and he plays fast because of it. He's not perfect, but he plays fast because of it. And one thing I was talking to him yesterday about this, that he used to play running back in high school. So he feels like he's able to think more like a running back. And I think that helps him anticipate where the back is going to go based on the action of the play. And he's able to get there fast. So he's doing a nice job, and he is a free agent after this year. So this is a good time for him to get a few games on film. And you can point to that Dallas game, and you can point to these games. Dallas from last year where he played really well, point to these games as a measuring stick of where are you at? And I do know, one of the reasons why they didn't go out and pursue another linebacker is because they liked how he finished, and they want to see where it went in the spring. And I think we're seeing now that he's good in that role he's playing. And next to Barton, but he was not, with I think for he and Jamin, for example, I don't know that that's the combo you want, because you want those guys playing fast and somebody else kind of calling the signals and being responsible for that so they can go do what they do. But anyways, that's why I think he's been doing well, and why he hasn't gotten those chances. Listen, it's like when Kirk Cousins was here, he's a 4th round pick. Everything for a while was kind of painted that way from the organization. Like, well, yeah, he's doing this, but he's a 4th round pick. But if you're a 1st round pick doing the same stuff, they may look at it differently than if you're a 4th, 5th, 6th round pick, whatever. And, so I think that's going to always taint things a little bit, and it takes them a little bit longer to get there. Curious to see how Hudson finishes, because he could set himself up for not some huge payday, but maybe for a better role, whether here or next or somewhere else, or maybe an even more firmer role as a backup with the chance to do some more things. So anyways, just want to share that and go. So number 4, a couple notes. And again, I just talked about this earlier, but the defense they've been playing against have been really, really good. And that's led to some of these offensive issues. Is it really the offense regressing, or they're just facing better teams and they weren't very good to begin with? And not just one position either. It's not just quarterback. So I think some of it definitely has to do with the defenses. And the styles they play are a bad match for this team. They were a good matchup against the Eagles. That's why they scored over 30 points against the Eagles both times. But these latest defenses, you're facing physical cornerbacks, you're facing strong defensive lines, and that's a tough combo for this team to beat. And I'll get to that in a minute with the Jets. And so, I think what this franchise needs to get to is the ability to win multiple ways. They don't have that. Now, I don't even know if they can beat you one way on offense right now, but they certainly can't beat you multiple ways. It's why you have to develop that run game, especially in a division like this. And just get to this time of the year, you need to have that run game. And that's coming from the offensive line. That's coming from play calling, scheme, the run game coordinator, who's Juan Castillo. Like, that's more than just, it's not just Bieniemy calling the plays. It's a whole, it's an army of folks there. Run game coordinator, offensive line, running backs, running with patience, running the way they need to, et cetera. And how you're setting it up, all that stuff. But you need to get to that point, and they're not. And you need to be able to have different kind of receivers who can beat you. You need to, I think this is where you say, can you add a bigger physical receiver at some point in the offseason, whether free agency or the draft at some point, to kind of balance what you have at that position, and just kind of add some diversity to that attack. And that way you get maybe a little bit more ability to beat a team. I also think for Howell, it's also getting back to, and this is where I go back to what I was talking about, the taking for granted stuff with Howell. So I'm going to segue to that right now real quick. But a lot of it was it his footwork? Was it this or that? I think it's more about just the reminding yourself to not always have to make the big play. And I think we saw that on the interception. He turns the corner on the defense. You got Antonio Gibson sitting right there in front of you for 7 yards. Take it. You even had McLaurin initially open there. Take one of those two. They're both there. But he waited, tried to extend it, try to make a big play. Then you make a really bad play because it's a bad decision. And that's the kind of stuff that they don't want him taking for granted, that you can just always make those plays, because you can't. And it's funny because JT O'Sullivan, who does the quarterback school on YouTube, is fantastic. But one of the things he talked about after the New England game was exactly that. Like, he didn't like some of the process, even though the play results were good. The process he was concerned about going forward, because the process is going to win out and the approach will win out. And since that game, there's sometimes we've seen where Howell's really good at the off-schedule plays, and still is. And there's a line where you have to say, when can you make that off-schedule play versus when do you hang in here? He's cut down on the sacks because he's been getting out more and making more of those plays. In fact, here's a stat for you. First 7 games, his sack percentage was 12.5. That's bad. That was second worst in the NFL in quarterbacks, behind only Daniel Jones. In the last 7 games, where he's making some more of those off-schedule plays and getting out of the pocket, sometimes maybe a little bit early, but he's making better decisions with it to get out there and not being sacked. Listen, that the Gibson play I pointed out earlier is an example. If he stays in there to look for the big play, you might get sacked. He took the right play, gets an 8-yard gain, no sack on a blitz. Good job. So in the last 7 games, the sack percentage is 6.1%. 19 quarterbacks in the last 7 games have had a worse percentage than that. So that's where, so you getting outside the pocket. So can you hang in there sometimes a little bit more? Yes. What's the result going to be? And that's that, well, this time you should have done this. Well, this time you should have done that. It's not easy to play. That's why those guys get big money. But then I think it's more, can you get through that process of reading consistently throughout and improving there? Because that's an area of growth that he'll have to make, is just some more of that. It's what I think any quarterback who has mobility, athleticism, and can run, it's the process they all have to go through. It's why they can be valuable early, because they can make plays with their legs, but ultimately you're going to win from the pocket. So can he get there? And that's something you'd like to see going forward. And if he can get there, and it may not happen over these next 3 games, may not happen to the degree they needed to midway through next year or the end of next year, but it might happen in a couple of years. What's it going to look like as he's continuing that climb? And he can get there because we've seen it. He has thrown with anticipation at times. There were some times in the preseason where they felt he was a little bit overly aggressive. And in his mind, he's like, well, I just want to see if I can make that throw. And because you need to learn, and that's what he was doing. So I think he can get there. It's a matter of him continuing and getting more experience. So anyways, just wanted to kind of talk about that for a second. Finally, the long snapper. This is for C, because I got one more thing on the game. But Tucker Addington comes in. I was talking to Tress Way, and the funny thing is about Cam Cheeseman, they felt like he had started to get into a good rhythm as a snapper and had one of his better practices. I think it was a week or 2 ago, and they felt they were in a good spot. And then he had a really bad game, and they had to make a move. So Tucker Addington comes in. He's been one of those guys who's been on the workout trail a lot this offseason. One of those guys who's always right there, and he was right there for these guys the first time around. And, now he's here. And I think one of the benefits for him is working with a guy like Tress, who is super upbeat. And I say that, and I think that's important because, one, it makes a guy feel welcome. He already took Tucker out to dinner, right? And just kind of socialized with him. That helps a guy feel comfortable. And especially when you're a long snapper, tends to be perfectionist. That helps. And so I think Addington got dropped into a good spot, or got signed to a good spot, because of how a guy like Tress is. And Nate Katchler, special teams coach, very upbeat guy. Joey Sly, an upbeat guy. So I think it's a good spot for him. Now, you just got to make the snaps, because the rest of it doesn't matter if you don't make the snaps. I get it. And so there you go. That's the 4 we got there. And I did want to bring, because I keep getting asked about Nick Sundberg, and I know he was on, I think, with Grant and Danny this week, and I remember talking to him at the time. There were some issues that he had with the coaching staff. The bottom line is he was hurt, and he wouldn't have been able to snap that year. And he said he probably wouldn't have made another roster. So it's not like they cut him and then, whatever. The way they handle it, you could have complete issues with. But the fact that he was cut, in his injury, his health is why he stayed out of the league. Because I remember talking to him a year later, and he was still having some issues, even though teams wanted him to come work out and just see, it was still preventing him from being the kind of snapper he needed to be. Anyway, just want to clear that up. Nick was a great guy, and he was a very good snapper, and it's a shame that he had so many injuries, because he was very good. Number 5, looking at the game. So what do we got here? I think what we got here is a game that's going to be difficult because the Jets' defensive line. And you got Quinnen Williams, who number 95, watch for him. That dude bowls people over. And I've seen that in the multiple games that I've watched with them. They have excellent corners in Sauce Gardner, DJ Reed. They're going to be problems with him. One of the things that you hear about Gardner is very multiple in how he uses press, uses various techniques, and uses them well. He's got some length. He's 6'3", not a big corner. He's only 200 pounds. And I bring that up because he's almost like, Emmanuel Forbes is a little bit miniature, more of a miniature version in terms of size of him. Gardner's a little bit bigger, but he's very thin. And he was even thinner when he came in the league. And then I think going back to Forbes, I don't know how much he's going to play this week. It'd be nice to see him more than 6 snaps, since he is the first round pick, right? But, the issue is not the size. So when people look at that, it's like he's not struggling because he's small. But I do think when you don't play with confidence as a corner, your size can stick out because you're playing a certain way. And maybe are you hesitant over here, over there? Well, if you are, then it's going to be a problem. So that's something to watch for us. But he's not struggling because of his size. He's struggling because he needs to improve with his techniques. So, and that's why I look at Gardner, not a huge corner, just a very, very good corner. And they will play a lot of cover 4. They're going to force you to be patient and throw underneath. Watch Miami score 30 points against them last week. You watch in the first half, most of those throws are like 5-yard throws. Just move it, or creating some move with the motion, creating gaps and angles for the defense, which is what the Dolphins do. But they were just like Tua would step back, get the ball out, smokes, little screens, things like that. So see if this team can do that, if they can be patient enough against this defense, because you're going to have to be very patient. Offensively, Jets stink. I mean, they average they're 31st in the NFL in scoring, average a little more than 12 a game. Trevor Siemian's going to start at quarterback. Breece Hall has not had, he can be an explosive back, but he's not had really good numbers of late. A lot of games where he's averaging about 2 yards a carry. So the run game has not been there, but can this team handle it? But I still go back to the defensive side. Washington has the worst ranked defense. The Jets have one of the top defenses. And I think the Jets defense is better. This matchup is better for them than Washington's is. And so I think that's where you're going to go. I'm going to say Jets 14-13 because it's a toss-up. And I think the key thing for here is, how does Howell progress? Does he play better? Because if the defense plays well and all that, you say, well, they should. The Jets offense stinks. But how does Howell navigate against another good defense? My other concern with that is, again, I brought up the 3 names at the top of the show: Brian Robinson, Leno, and Tyler Larson. Now, are those 2 Pro Bowlers? No, but you're still going with backups. And I like Cornelius Lucas. Maybe he's a big guy. He's good for a few games when he goes in there. He could do a nice job. But I think at center with Nick Gates, smaller guy, they do have some beef inside. They do have some quickness or some power in there, and that's more their game. I think the hard part is their corners are very good at covering. So if they play a lot of press against this defense, against this offense, then it allows that size to get through and win. And they really do a good job collapsing that pocket. So if they condense it for Howell and he can't get outside there, it's going to be a problem. So you need to move that around a little bit. You need to have some balance to your run game. I think they felt like they were getting that last week against the Rams. And then, it was more balanced than it had been. And then at the end, you got to go 2-minute. But so if they can do that with Rodriguez and Gibson, then they could be okay. But I'm just concerned with that. And, so there you go. 14-13 Jets. That's what I got. Merry Christmas. Happy holidays. I'll talk to you. I'm going to do something after the game, but it may not run till Tuesday morning because it's Christmas, folks, and unless you want it right away, and there's going to be it might be harder to get it out right away on the video, but we'll see. So check back after the game. I will have it up there. We'll try and get up as soon as possible, but I will be back Tuesday night with a live stream show with Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders. And I don't know about a film review this week because I think we're going to run out of time because it's kind of a crazy week. So see what we do. But either way, Merry Christmas. Talk to you next time.